Hey, welcome back to the POC Motorsports channel. On today's video, I'm going to tell you about the top 10 things you should know before you go and purchase one of these half-ton Chevy trucks from 99 to 2006. The door handles, they break when it gets cold out and a guy yanks on them when the rubber door seals are frozen shut. So I have not broken many of these because I'm aware of their weakness and I don't get very hard on them. I just am gentle with it, and it's served me well. Also, the inner door handles, if you get too crazy with those, they'll break. The tailgate latch, a lot of people break these things because they get hard on them when it's cold out. And when it's cold out, plastic gets brittle, and there are that little red thing in there and the white one on that side. Those little things break when it's cold out. They get brittle, and if you go reefing on the door handle or the tailgate latch, she's probably gonna pop off. Also, this trim piece falls off a lot. So if you're aware of it and you're careful with it and treat it accordingly, you should not have that problem. The fuel pump, it goes out, you know, when you have a truck with miles on it. Mine went out about 150,000 miles in, and to replace it, you need to pull the bed off. So unless you have a buddy to help you pull the bed off, or a forklift, or a crane, or a cherry picker, you might end up cutting a hole in your bed to replace the fuel pump, because the fuel tank is directly under the front driver's side of the bed, and the fuel pump goes in the top, and so that's something you're going to want to think about. I don't think they're very expensive, maybe $100 if you get a cheap one from O'Reilly's. I think I used an AC Delco original equipment one that I end up paying I think $250 for. The 10-bolt differential in the back is not the strongest thing in the world. If you drive it like an adult, you shouldn't have too many problems, but if you're like me and you like to have some fun, then it's probably gonna break on you. As you can see, I've upgraded my differential to a 14-bolt semi-floater out of a heavy half-ton. Now it's bulletproof. The transfer case pump, after a few miles can wear a hole through the case somewhere in here. I can't remember, somewhere on the bottom here. I can't remember when mine went out. I think it was probably 140,000 miles. Don't worry though, there is a replacement pump housing that you can put in. You do have to take your transfer case apart, but it's only $20 for the upgrade when I did it, and if you do it before it busts a hole in your case, then you won't have to worry about that. The 4L60E transmission is not the strongest transmission out there. It's a good transmission, but you need to know a few things about it. First, you do not want to go towing a heavy load in overdrive. It will probably destroy itself. A solution there would be to haul in third gear if it's a heavy load, which you're gonna have to drive slower or run at higher RPMs, and it might be a little louder. They do have a tow haul option on some of them though, where you can hit the tow haul mode, and I believe that makes it easier on your transmission. So take her easy on that 4L60E. If you treat it right, I've seen them last 300,000 miles. The O2 sensors, they go out on these trucks. I think replaced my first set around 160,000 miles, and now I'm due for another set at 225,000 miles. So it's very easy to replace those. Anyone with a set of wrenches can do it easily. You can get them pretty inexpensive at O'Reilly's or one of these other whatever parts store you have in town, or off Amazon. If you get the original stuff, I think that's usually a little better, but it also costs a few more bucks. The good news about that though is you can just do that in your driveway, crawl right under the vehicle, and with one wrench, and go do your O2 sensors. The intake gaskets, they tend to start leaking at over 100,000 miles somewhere. The good news is they are not terribly difficult to replace if you have a few wrenches. But I do have one tip for you. If you're in there replacing it, you might want to clean your engine off before you pull it off, because if you have any dirt built up on top of your intake and you pull it off, all that dirt's going to fall down into your intake runners, and that's not ideal. The knock sensors, they go out every once in a while, and the good news is when you do your intake gaskets, you will have to pull the intake off to do that, and while you're in there, you can access your knock sensors. So depending on what the first thing is to go out, the knock sensors or the intake gaskets, while they're in there, you should do both. Save yourself a headache. It'll cost a few extra dollars, but at the end of the day, you only pull your intake off once. The front axle seals. I have not seen a truck like this with over 100,000 miles on it that has not needed the front axle seals replaced. They tend to start leaking fairly early on, and they are a pretty easy fix. You will probably need a few sets of pry bars maybe, and a couple of wrenches. Not that big a deal. I did mine in a few hours, but it's something you need to know before you go buying one of these. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I think all these things are pretty reasonable fixes, especially if you plan on driving your vehicle hundreds of thousands of miles. If you do that with any vehicle, you are going to have some maintenance. These things are not hard to do. I would say the most, if you take care of your transmission, you don't have to worry about that. If you drive like an adult, take care of your rear end, you don't have to worry about that. The knock sensors and intake gaskets, I would say, are probably the most time consuming to replace and intensive, but that's those are gonna go out. You can't really do anything about that. Now, a little bonus thing, I have not had this problem on my truck, but I have lots of friends, and I've seen it on the internet, that the gauge cluster, sometimes the lights and the gauges will quit working on that. There are a lot of companies out there, though, that you can just ship your gauge cluster off to, and they will fix it up for you. They will replace some of the lighting in it, maybe even some of the little servos or whatever they are that work the little gauges on your little meters there. So that's a bonus one for you. All that being said, I still think that this is the best truck a guy can get for less than 10 grand in 2022. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, go ahead and tell me about it in the comments, and go get yourself one of these trucks.